they actually didn't need it. This is a good example of, in a way, a pretty hard to execute lineup, just done very, very well. And if you do it this well, you obviously don't need base breaking heroes because you have top 5 net worth, then you're probably fine. I don't think top 5 net worth has ever lost in Dota, actually. So they just did very well in their ganks. They utilized the Tusk very well, I think, a lot of the time. As Waga pointed out, Zeus got loads of Bloodstone charges, and it just seemed like they had a really good idea in this game about how far they could push their lineup in the fights with, like, disengaging, re-engaging. I think Hal's Queen of Pain as well in this game was exceptionally good at finding angles. It was very nice to see how he... a lot of the time when players use Sonic Wave, it's you get into position, you cast it, but sometimes you would like blink into odd angles and find like more of I don't know what you could call it, like a diagonal Sonic Wave into the fight where it's very difficult to position yourself for because that's not the direction you're expecting the Sonic Wave to come from. So that was really nice to see.
Yeah, and we'll take a look at one of those fights that Vici Gaming had that turned out very successful for them. But going forward, I mean, Ben, this one, of course, not too long ago from the end of the game, with the Ice Shards also doing a really nice job.
Yeah, there's a big wall here, and you think it's going to go very well for Vici Gaming, but, they got a mech, and they quickly turn it right back around, and next thing you know, everyone gets annihilated, and by that point, Moo just doesn't really have enough on his Ember Spirit to do a lot with his Sleight of Fist, so he just ends up crumbling with the rest of his team, and Vici Gaming really stepped up here. We were all getting a bit nervous about him, but...
I like how they adapted to Newbie's lineup. They expected Newbie to go for a very similar sort of lineup, which they did. A fair amount of early game, fair amount of team fight with the Dragon Knight in the mid to sort of siege towers, and then they responded by just going even more all in early game and just dominating them early. One of the things that was particularly standing out for me was how poor Ember Spirit was and how he didn't cope well with the Queen of Paint at all. And as well as the Tusk. Like generally, I think Ember Spirit versus Spirit Breaker is pretty good for Ember Spirit. You can slight dodge the charge, you can use your ultimate, and you can just Searing Chains it in a row. There's 3 methods. But with a Tusk initiating on you, you don't have any of those available to you, and you just get chain sudden died. Ember Spirit is very fragile, and he was working on his Manta the whole game, didn't even complete the Yasha, and just had very minimal impact. But I did like Vici's adaptations. Like, okay, screw this. They're like early mid game, we're just going early game.
Yeah, they definitely seized that moment very well. We'll take a look at the end of the game here as we wrap it up, game 2 between Vici and Newbie. And actually, we're getting a little bit of update from Fnatic versus Complexity, it looks like.
I believe this game is, I guess, in somewhat of a sense irrelevant, where both of these teams have already got their spots decided. So.
Right. Yeah, but Complexity definitely showing a strong going through. I mean, looks like they will be continuing this trend going to the bracket stage. We will have the replay from our game come back up here in a little bit between UB versus Vici Gaming. And when I was outside watching the game with some of the other guys, Nahaz is now here getting ready for next week, and he was just saying that he was actually one of the few people that are like, no, I definitely think Vici Gaming can win this. And in the past, Vici Gaming would easily win with this kind of draft, even if most people doubted it. Seems like that pulled through. Tell us a little, do you agree with that? Like, if it was maybe a couple months ago that Vici Gaming would have looked a lot more confident here. Maybe they're just returning to something that's more in their comfort zone.
I don't know if this is a comfort zone Vici game. I just think they've played a lot of different things, and the thing that they seem to keep coming back to is that I don't know if this is a weird game in a sense compared to the other stuff they've played, because they haven't really done this like all in early game much this tournament, I feel. Generally, they've had one hard carry on How, and then Super has, as Ben has pointed out on previous occasions, he does very well with the active mids rather than the more farm-centric mids. In this game, he played why can't I remember what hero he played in this game? That's actually Zeus.
Zeus, yes.
Of course, another really... It's a fighting mid, right? You farm a little bit, and then you get really active. As far as whether they're getting back into it, it's hard to say because, the results keep varying from time to time. Like, they seem more hit or miss to me, more than getting back into it. I need to see, this was, I believe, was this the last game of the group, or do they have one more?
I believe this was their last one. Yeah.
So I need to see the best of threes from them, like where you can see the direct progress going on before we can really call them a top contender this time around, which for me is a surprise. I thought they were going to show up big. They've been middle of the pack, I guess, all in all, and maybe slightly above.
Yeah. Dakota, what are your thoughts on Vici Gaming after this game?
Well, congratulations, Ben. Zeus finally gets a win. I actually
that's
think
true,
he's
yeah.
1-6 now. Coddle has yet to get a win. So
That's the
Maybe
next
we've
one.
seen so many gyrocopter picks because of the new Immortal.
this is true.
What about
Oh.
Night Stalker? What's his score? Is he one?
I want to say yes.
I want to say yes as well.
I think I casted a game where he
I've seen
did
2
win.
losses.
But yeah, but Zeus was like the big standout where it's like way up there. He's yet to find success, and as I said before, even with the nice synergetic lineup of him and Bloodseeker, just hasn't found that win yet. But they get it here, and more or less the same thing for VG Gaming overall. They have a lot of emphasis on their early game. They succeed with their lanes. Hao's able to get a quick Orchid, which forces the Ember to try to go for a Manta, which is not your comfort grab for an Ember. And maybe the second they recognize, oh, he's got an Ultimate Orb and he's making this kind of commitment, we'll just pounce and take advantage of that. And he really didn't end up getting much more after that. So they took advantage of the newbie weakness and just exposed it.
VG Gaming to me is a little discombobulated, I would say, just because if you watch most of Newbie's games prior, it's pretty similar to what they draft almost every single game, and their playstyle is generally very similar. However, they adapted to it in game number 2 and not in game number 1. If it were a team like EG, let's say, I think they would have already done their homework beforehand. They would have already been prepared for all the picks, and they would have stopped that sort of strategy right in its tracks. And the fact that they dropped the first game, even though it wasn't anything special from Newbie, is very worrisome for me. Although I think it does bode well for Vici in future best of threes.
Okay, so still a little bit hard to tell, but we'll see how things pan out as we go into the main event for these guys. We'll take a look at the standings here because there's some a little bit more interesting stuff. Of course, the last days when all these possibilities come out, a lot of people get excited calculating, all right, what's the probability of each team moving onward? And for Group B, things are still a little bit up in the air.
I hate when it gets to this because then you have a team that's like, well, we're hoping that they draw and they get
Right.
a win. If they blow their nose over there, we might be able to etch into that tight 4 spot. Yeah, this is where it really gets mad.
So how many teams have 7 games played? It looks like only Vici.
Yeah, so Vici
Okay.
is done, and we still have quite a few games left. Now, the important thing here is, I believe if MVP Hot 6, yeah, if they win all of their games, and a couple other situations happen, like you said, maybe they blow their nose or something like that, Hot 6 still has a chance to contest for that 4th seed in Group B. So even though they only have 1 point, if they get,
Yeah,
right?
That is
If they get-
super unlikely.
It is
like-
very unlikely, right? They have to play... They have to play, what, Newbie
and Empire. They have to win all 4 games.
Yes.
Hope eHome loses their games. Newbie draws with Vici, which did happen. So,
That's good. That's
and
good.
then we'll have 4 teams tied at 7 for tiebreakers. So they still would have to battle through a tiebreaker.
So it's still possible.
There
It's-
is-
it's
So
out
you're
there.
saying
There is hope. There's a chance
Yes.
for Hot 6. So
Yeah,
far,
not
they just have to
ve-
win everything.
Yeah, not
Realistic probability,
right. Not very likely.
less than 1 digit. That is not possible. Point one
Okay.
digit.
What do you think, Ben?
Who does eHome play?
eHome has to play CDEC.
eHome, yeah.
And CDEC is currently 4-0-1, so they've won 4 of their matches.
I mean, eHome beating CDEC is not that improbable.
They did it in
just
the,
because of the qualifiers,
in
but
the-
in this particular tournament, CDEC's looking much better. So,
Right.
I mean, I think eHome is probably the most likely candidate for 4th slot, especially because they have 2 series left to play, I believe.
Just
one?
one now.
Did they
Oh no,
already
they
play
do have.
Virtus Pro?
No,
You
they
don't
have
have
to play Virtus Pro.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Virtus Pro as well as EG, right?
Yeah.
So, I don't know. It's
First Pros will CDEC.
CDEC. Yeah. eHome has to play CDEC.
okay.
Either there's.
And I don't know if you mentioned, but it's also important, like, as far as the top of the group, what is it? So if in their 2 last matchups, if CDEC get just 1 draw, they're tied for first.
If CDEC gets only 1 draw.
Because CDEC has 12 points and EG has 10.
Right.
And CDEC has 2 series remaining and EG has 1.
But that
No,
one of them is EG.
Yeah,
So,
so if
EG
they
has
dr-
to beat CDEC.
EG has to beat CDEC, but then if CDEC draws against the other team, oh yeah, then they
CDEC
actually have
just
to win
needs
because they would lose on heads up.
To
Right.
win
EG,
2 games.
true.
That's
Yeah.
it. They just
They
need
have
to
to
win
win
2
2 games in
That's
separate
it.
series. That's correct.
Yeah.
That's true.
Against
So-
either EG or eHome.
Yeah. Or 1 in each.
Or one in
Or
each.
one
So
in
yeah,
each,
CDEC
that's right.
simply just has to win 2 maps, and then they're cruising through in first place in Group B, which is probably the biggest surprise in terms of how big of a surprise it itself is, right?
Oh,
Not
yeah.
just playing well, but for them to move up over a team like EG, over some of these other teams like Vici Gaming in Group B.
Coming from the wild card, too.
Yeah.
You gotta remember that. It's like a Cinderella story in itself.
It really is. I mean,
Yeah.
no matter where they end up now in the main event, the fact that they pulled that off in 1 week span is a pretty impressive feat. And we talked about this in the wildcard plans. We said, yeah, they're the favorite in the wildcard plans, but within the wildcard plans. Any of these teams, if they move through, maybe top 8, most likely top 10 is what you guys said. Now it's not looking like it anymore. CDEC definitely pulling a big shot here for TI5.
Well, 2 of the qualifier teams already are top 10.
That's very true.
Or top 9, I guess. Or yeah, it's like it's weird to talk about top 10 because 9 through 12 is the same placement this year. There's 13, 16, 9 through 12, and then it's like 5, 6, and then each individual place after that. I think so.
Yeah.
But Complexity and CDEC are already confirmed winners bracket, which means if you lose out from there, you're still 9th.
Right.
Because you skip the first round in the lower bracket, which bumps you up that one step.
Yeah.
So.
That's
They're
true.
going to be feeling pretty good about themselves. I mean, they've already secured, what's that, $215,000 right now for 9th through 12th.
Something like that, I believe,
So
yeah.
No big deal.
it's pretty good going into that.
No big deal.
And
Let's
there's an
just figure.
interesting thing that that was brought up yesterday is that if you win your first match in the winner's bracket, you win $1 million.
That's TI1 right there.
Yes.
That's
Right.
the grand final
Yeah.
Sixth
right there.
Talked
place,
about
sixth
that.
place this year is 1.15 million yesterday, and you jump up from the about 200,000 I said. So that
Yes,
one best of
that's
3
a
is worth $1 million.
huge difference.
That's
So
absolutely
you probably want to
insane.
choose your opponent that you can
Yeah.
beat
Right,
with
and
an
yeah,
easy
that's
million.
why it matters so
So-
much. Again, I mean, sure, if you've already achieved somewhat of your goal, there's less pressure, but at the same time, when you're that close, like when it's only one match, it's not that you have to win the finals, that's a pretty big deal, and you're like, you get excited, right? You're like, all right, I want my best shot. Going back to it, though, again, Group B, nothing is set yet. MVP Hot Six still technically has that chance. If anything, they still have a chance to be able to select their opponents in the lower bracket. Just because they're at the very bottom of Group B does not mean they're down and out, and they simply just have to boost their confidence. And again, we talk about everyone having this story a little bit. Hot Six, of course, a bit of a nice story among themselves. We're going to take a look at Heen and his team's history coming into TI5.
I grew up in many places because my dad, he's a diplomat, so I had to follow him around on his tours. Every time we move, it's goodbye to my friends, and as I got older, it was harder to make friends. I started playing games at the age of 8 or 9. Our country had one of the first esports scene in the world, and even as a kid, there were professional gamers who were making big bucks and getting a lot of airtime, and the more and more I tried, the more and more it seemed like I could be one of those people. And by the time I was 22, I was playing competitively. At the age of 24 is when I was called to the army service. It was hard for me as a gamer because I thought I was playing the best just before I had to go into the military.
When you go to military service, you're usually like, hey, I'm done from competitive gaming. I'm done.
It was kind of like recovering from an injury, and I tried my best to get in shape again. Towards the end of my service, March recruited me, even though I had been not in the scene for 2 years.
When I see the players, I value their talents, but also I value their approach to the games and their passions. And then he had all 3, so I was sure that he will be back up there.
We played together for a year, and that's when I moved to MVP Hot Six. My role in the team as a captain, it's to make sure that everyone on my team is given a chance to play their A game. So I want to give them confidence. I hope TI5 will be the tournament that proves to me that my team can be one of the best. But it would basically be a statement for myself that I can achieve anything, as long as I don't give up.